XD has a compact toolset that is easy to use and that will be in a few ways very familiar to Illustrator users. If I tap R to access the rectangle tool, then I can use the Shift key to constrain a shape. You'll see there that ends up as a square. I can also use the Alt key to draw from the center outwards, and of course Alt and Shift combined will draw me a square from the center outwards. There are corner widgets very similar to those in Illustrator. You'll see if I just drag here I can change the corner roundness, and if you use the Alt key then you can affect an individual corner like so. If you prefer, however, then you can use the PI over here, and you'll see that if you enable corner rounding then you can put in your own values over on the right hand side there, and of course you can set that to none as well if you choose to do so. I'll just remove those two by getting my selection tool here and removing them. So if I tap V for that and drag across like so. The PI also gives me some other options for fill and stroke. So if I just draw a rectangle at the top here, you can see how that works. I'm going to turn off the stroke, although if I wanted to I could change the color just here of the stroke, and of course the width of the stroke just there as well, but I'll turn that off. Fill color from the HSBA picker like so, very easy to do, or you can actually pick using an eyedropper. You'll see if I bring out my eyedropper then I can pick that up from anywhere I can see on the artboards. I can change the master opacity for the object like so, and I can add a shadow if I want to, and I can set the X and Y offset as well as the actual amount of blur just there. So if I just increase that to 10 for example, you'll see that gets a little bit deeper there like so. There's also a really nifty feature called background blur, and if I just hold down the space bar to pan over to this artboard, where I can actually blur out a background. If I draw a rectangle just here, I'm just going to turn the stroke off for that one and enable background blur, you can see I can change the amount of blurriness and of course the brightness as well if I want to dim that down, and the opacity of that there like so. And that's really handy if I wanted to do something like use a modal dialog like this. If I just drag this one on and then bring that to the front using the arrange menu just there. It's a really cool feature, background blur. So I'll come back onto this artboard. We've got other tools, of course. There is a line tool just here, and that's simple enough. If you click and drag, then a line is drawn. You can change the dimensions numerically if you want to over on the right hand side in the PI. So for example, if I wanted to set that to be exactly 300, then I could do that and enter that value, and that would be what it is. I can at any point adjust where that is and stretch it and change it, and if I hold down the Shift key you'll see that it's constrained to 45-degree increments there as well. I'll just delete that one. By the way, if you are drawing rectangles and you want to rotate those, you'll see if I hover outside, just as in Illustrator, I can start rotating there, and if you hold down the Shift key with rectangles then it moves in 15-degree increments as well, which is very handy for drawing. There's a pen tool inside of XD, and you can draw in a few different ways. You'll see if I just click at these points, then I'm placing just straight lines here. If I want to create a curve from this, and I simply double click on a point, that gives me handles, and then I can come across and click and drag like so to draw additional shapes there. You can change any of these at any time, and this also works with other shapes. If I use the selection tool here and go to a point, I can move it around like so. I can also double click on it to change it from a straight point to a curve point, or double click again to change it from a curve point to a corner point. Points with handles can be changed very easily, and you can hold down the Alt key to disassociate the handles from one another so they can be used independently if you need to do that. So you can change all of those things around. I'll just remove that shape just now. And additionally, when you're moving around, if you need to add a point, then you can just click and add a point like so. And you can even steer them around just as you can in Illustrator using the arrow keys on the keyboard. There are some other operations that I can use to draw more complex objects. So if I start with an ellipse here, and then I draw a circle from the center outwards, I'm going to come along and draw another circle directly on top of that one. Let's pinch to zoom in just here, and I'll just pan with the spacebar. I'm now going to go to my selection tool, and I'm going to target the circle at the back, and I'm going to click and change the fill color of that like so. So you can see the two things are there, and I'll just change this one just temporarily to something slightly different. There we go. I'm not going to be keeping it, so I'm not worried about that contrast. You'll see that I can change this in a second and get this shape to punch from the other. First, however, I'm going to double click on the edge of this circle, which allows me to work with the individual points. So you'll see I can bring this one down using the Smart Guide to show me when it's in position. And if I double click on the point, that changes it to a corner. If I now select both of these things and select the Boolean subtract, then that will drop that out, and I've got one single shape that moves around. Let's go for the whole artboard so you can see things through it. If I needed to edit this at all, and I'll just reverse pinch again to zoom in on this, I could of course stop the Boolean just there by clicking on it like so and reapply it when I've done, or using the command key I can click on the edge of the shape and then I can make any edits I want to make just there, including nudging that around with the keyboard if I want to do so. So that's it for the basics of drawing in XD. Tomorrow we'll start to build out something much more interesting.